Good morning. Warren Hamilton from Senate District 7 with a legislative update on Thursday, the 5th of May, 2022. And I want to talk to you about a couple of things today. First is what's driving most of the news right now is the Supreme Court ruling on the original Roe v Wade decision and on the Planned Parenthood versus Casey decision. This leak that if it actually turns out to be true, will have momentous import for every state around the country. The original decision, states asserted, and my particular platform has always asserted that this is a state's authority issue, that the states have the authority to determine this for themselves, which is why I've always advocated that Oklahoma already has the authority under the 10th Amendment to abolish abortion totally in the state of Oklahoma. One thing that we absolutely do agree on now, abolitionists and pro-lifers, is that when the court says this, then there's no obstacles to us abolishing abortion in Oklahoma. So the big question, it's one that I've heard now, one that I pose to all of the leadership in the state, and it's also one that's been posed to me throughout my adult life, and one that has been posed to me in the last 7 days, and I will answer it. That question is, what you going to do now, sir? And so what I ask the leadership of Oklahoma is that when this finally comes out and the Supreme Court says we got it wrong on Roe and on Planned Parenthood v. Casey, that what we do is we abolish abortion totally and without exception, and we do it immediately. Now if we need to go into special session to make sure that our laws don't contradict each other, if we need to go into special session to make sure that the laws that we do pass, or the law that we pass, actually does establish equal justice for everybody under the law, then that's what we need to do. And I would consider it a privilege to work with anybody to ensure that our legislation is as airtight as is possible. To that end, the question's been posed to me because of my comments, questioning on the Senate floor last week regarding the issue of ectopic pregnancy. So before I answer, I want to admit that the way that I questioned has caused some confusion about where I stand on the issue. So let me clarify and reiterate that from the very beginning, from the time I started campaigning, what I said is that in situations where the mother's life is in danger, what you do not have is an abortion. You have medical triage. This effort is all about saving lives, and I never intended to imply that the mother's life is any less valuable than the baby's life. The gist of my questioning is this. As you've heard me say, anytime we leave a loophole or an exception, that there's going to be unscrupulous people who don't actually qualify for that exception, who are going to try to take advantage of it. So the hypothetical situation that I see is perhaps you'd have a woman who actually does not have an ectopic pregnancy that seeks to have an abortion, when this is the only exception that we allow now is for the life of the mother, which is legit. This person who does not meet those conditions goes to see a medical professional who is actually pro-abortion, and they falsify something between the two of them that allows them to qualify for an exemption that they really don't qualify for. Now, I recognize that I should have said that and stated that on the floor. My recommendation right now is that we introduce an ultrasound on this to actually determine an ectopic pregnancy. And then if that actually exists, then we go through the procedures necessary in order to save the mother's life. I also want to reiterate here what I've gotten several hundred emails, mostly from around the country. One of these emails said to me that an ectopic pregnancy is not a person. Well, I beg to differ. From the moment that the sperm fertilizes the egg, you have a unique human being created in the image of God. So to that end, to anybody who's ever had to negotiate the tragedy of an ectopic pregnancy, my heart goes out to you, and but for the grace of God go I. To the person who sent me an email stating that they hoped that my daughter suffered from an ectopic pregnancy, shame on you. So if you want to correct me because my comments were not as erudite and educated as they should be, guilty as the day is long. Keep it coming because I deserve it. But what I'm trying to do is to save lives, and I want to make sure that our laws are as airtight as possible. To that end, that was the gist of my questions, and I'm sorry for creating the confusion that I've created. But just to reiterate, no woman ever goes, there's something wrong with the baby, we need to go to Planned Parenthood. That never happens. When somebody thinks that there may be a problem, they go see their OBGYN, their doctor, or they go to the hospital. And then, if that condition turns out to actually be the case, then what we do is we save as many lives as possible. And so that's where I was going with that. Now, I'd also ask that we get some perspective here. I am not the king. I would not accept that assignment if you put a gun to my head. We don't have kings in these United States. I'm not the governor. I'm not the head of any one of the two houses of the Oklahoma legislature. I am one of 150 legislators in the state of Oklahoma. No better and no worse than anybody else. I was nobody when I came into this job. I'm nobody now. I'll be nobody when I leave. But I'm somebody in the eyes of God. And so is every one of these children who is aborted. So is every one of these children who's aborted. What we're trying to do here is save lives. We have obvious exceptions in bills that should not be there. I have campaigned on this very stridently and always will say that there's not going to be an exception on any piece of legislation that I'm going to sign on to for rape or incest. I listened to President Reagan's radio addresses from before he was elected president. And what he said was, abortion's terrible, and the only cases it should be allowed is in rape, incest, life of the mother. My question, that happened 40 years ago. Why is it that in 40 years of the best legal scholars on the planet and the most sincere legislators on the planet, we don't even have that? Now again, I wouldn't support it because of the rape and incest exceptions. Why is it that we have so many people that are so strident for the rape exception to be in there, but they're not equally as ardent in their advocacy for the death penalty for the rapist? You have an innocent person who is being put to death because of a capital crime that has been committed, and we're not putting to death the criminal. Rape is and should always be a capital crime because the murder victim's suffering is over. Tragedy that it is, but the rape victim has to live with the consequences of that heinous crime every day for the rest of her or his life. So think about that. I thank you for your time. I apologize for the confusion that I've created. And regarding this issue, and regarding specifically the Supreme Court decision and its impending release, what I ask everybody who hears this to do is to pray. Pray intentionally, pray deliberately, and pray sincerely, and pray specifically. In addition to what your normal prayers are, pray on this specific issue, that God's will be done, that His name will be glorified, that innocent life will be saved. Thank you. God bless you. God bless Oklahoma, and God bless America.